Hi, it's Writing Wednesday, and today I'm going to give you a writing tip about how not to write the ending of your story, and I'm going to do it by using the example of a very popular TV sitcom that just ended its 9-year run, How I Met Your Mother. If you've never watched the show and you don't care about it, no problem. If you've watched the show and you've already seen the finale, no problem. But if you've watched the show and you haven't seen the finale, you should probably quit watching this video right now because there are going to be spoilers galore. Also, I realize it's ironic that I'm talking about How I Met Your Mother while wearing my Big Bang Theory t-shirt, but it's the only sitcom t-shirt I have. So, How I Met Your Mother is a show that I watched fairly regularly throughout the probably first 5 or 6 seasons. Then I stopped watching it for a while and caught up during this last year on the last few seasons because I did want to know how it ended. It was a show that, you know, sometimes its off-color humor was a little too off-color for my taste. Sometimes it's trying to be ironic. Sexism was actual sexism. But despite that, I watched it because, at least in the early seasons, it had some really fresh and funny writing. There was a talented cast, and there was a unique twist to the storytelling that I really enjoyed. However, I think I'm along with the vast majority of fans and critics who watched the finale in being very disappointed with how it ended. I think the reason why people were so disappointed had to do with a very specific writing problem, which I think is very avoidable, and that's why I'm choosing to talk about it here on my writing vlog, where I do not normally review TV shows. So for those who don't know, How I Met Your Mother began 9 years ago with the premise that the main character, Ted, sits down his now teenage children in the year 2030 to tell the story of How I Met Your Mother. And the pilot episode begins with Ted seeing a beautiful girl in a bar and saying to himself, "I'm going to marry that girl someday." And the twist at the end of the first episode, it turns out he tells the kids, and that's the story of How I Met Your Aunt Robin. So we know from the very beginning, from the get-go, that Robin is not going to be the mother of his children. She's going to be a lifelong friend of his, and that information is set from the very first episode. The other thing that we now know was set almost from the beginning of this show was the ending. And in fact, it was filmed very, very early on, around the first season, when they didn't know how long the show was going to last for. They filmed a scene with Ted's teenage kids, which they obviously had to do then before the actors got too much older looking, in which he explains to them that he met Robin, he didn't marry her, he fell in love with and met and married their mother, but then their mother died some years ago, tragically young, and now, some years after her death, he's going to get back together with his first love, Robin. That's the ending that played out on screen the other night, to the disappointment and, I would say, even rage of thousands of fans. In the great writer debate of how much you should plan your story and how much you should just wing it, I've always been a fan of winging it. Now, I do a certain amount of outlining and planning, but I really believe in letting the story unfold organically and tell you as the writer what it has to tell you, which is the crucial thing that I think the writers of How I Met Your Mother missed out on. You see, they had the ending planned out from the beginning, but what they didn't know was that the show was going to last 9 years and that there were going to be a lot of twists and turns and changes and character growth and development along the way. So yes, Ted and Robin fall in love, they get together for a while, it doesn't work out, they break up, they remain friends, they have several attempts at getting back together which don't work out. Robin meets and falls in love with and eventually marries Ted's sleazebag friend Barney, even though we find out in the finale that that relationship, which they spent several seasons building up to, ends very quickly in divorce. You see, the writers of How I Met Your Mother gave viewers the ending they had always planned on, but by the time they got there, 9 years later, it was no longer an ending that fit who these characters had become or the things that had happened to them. But the writers stuck desperately to their original plan and hammered home this ending, even though in many ways it felt like a betrayal of everything that had gone before. Novelists obviously don't have as many unknown quantities to contend with as TV show producers do. I mean, TV show producers have to worry about things like what kind of chemistry the actors are going to have, and the choices the director is going to make, and how fans are going to respond, what character is going to become a fan favorite, and of course the ever unending question of how long the show is going to last. But clearly novelists don't have to deal with that kind of uncertainty. We're much more in control of our work, but you still have the element of the uncertain, in which, say, you write a scene between two characters who are supposed to be platonic friends, and you discover that the scene absolutely sizzles, and you think, maybe these two should be the love interests. Or you write about the minor character who's supposed to be sort of background, but they become so interested and absorbing that they gradually start to take up more and more of the space and become a major character. The writing itself leads you places that you didn't originally expect to go. What I've learned from the fiasco of the finale of How I Met Your Mother is, don't be so tied to where you think your story is going that you become blind to where it actually wants to go. I mean, this has happened to me as a writer. I've told many people the story how in the novel By the Rivers of Brooklyn, I wrote a scene ahead of time, a future scene that was going to happen later in the book, and I loved that scene. And then when I finally got in the writing of the story up to where that scene was supposed to happen, I had to scrap nearly all of it, because the character it was happening to, by the way I had developed her character up to that point, there's no way she would have done the things I had her saying and doing in that scene. It wasn't true to who the character had become, and I had to let go of that original vision. Obviously, particularly if you're writing genre fiction, some things are said. If you're writing a romance, you're going to want your hero and heroine to end up in each other's arms at the end. If you're writing a mystery, you'll want the bad guy to be revealed and punished at the end. But even if you're a dedicated outliner and planner, don't assume that you know everything about the end of the journey and how your characters are going to get there. Listen to your characters, watch the story as it twists and turns, and give your story room to grow and room to breathe, so that by the time you get to your grand finale, your readers are not going to feel cheated. They're going to feel, this is the only possible ending this story could have had.